A cemetery of the living. In my travels, I came to a country whose most prestigious cemetery could only be entered by the living. The dead were strictly forbidden to be brought inside. Instead, when the dying reached the point of no return, they were encouraged to walk inside, under their own power if possible, and find a grave of their choosing. To accommodate the near-dead who enter the cemetery, coffins of various types and sizes are provided free of charge, all sitting close to the plots where they will soon be buried. As they enter, the almost dead repeat a phrase that could be roughly translated as, "I choose to die, to trade my body so that my name might live on," which distinguishes them from mere visitors. On a given day, it is not unusual to see several of the newly arrived a coughing child, a man of skin and bones, a young woman shaking, her bandages dripping uncontrollably, all painfully hauling their bodies from place to place, trying to choose a final place to rest. The families of the dead are not provided any financial incentive or reward, but to have a relative interred in the cemetery is considered the highest honor. Indeed, the finest matriarchs are known to compare the sheer number of their ancestors buried in the cemetery, and certain neighborhoods of the city are reserved only for families who can count 100 ancestors interred there. On the darker side, there are those who find themselves in the cemetery prematurely. Some are known to have waited days for death to come, shivering in the cold and subsisting on flower petals and rainwater, but they dare not leave the place once they enter. To do so would summon the worst of misfortunes, not only for the almost dead, but for their entire families. One story is told of a woman long ago who thought she was dying, only to pass a kidney stone on the third day of her time in the cemetery. Upon realizing she was healthy, she left the hallowed place and returned home to the great horror of her family, who promptly chopped her to bits and fed her to the stray dogs at the city's border, as is done with petty criminals. Still, misfortune found them. Within a year, their crops had failed, and 3 children had died of different ailments. It wasn't until they sent their last remaining child, a healthy boy of 10, into the cemetery that the curse was lifted. They say it took nearly 2 weeks before exposure finally took him. Some say you can still hear his hungry cries echoing through the willows when you visit. Afterward, the family hosted a feast that lasted for 3 days, ushering in a decade of happiness and good fortune. Many years later, a statue was erected in his honor, though by then his name and face had been forgotten, leaving him mostly erased, nothing but a vague symbol of wonderful sacrifice.